everybody. Can I have your attention, please? Hello. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the 11th World Recreational Fisheries Conference. World Fishing? Is it fishing or fisheries? We always get it. Fishing, sorry. My name is Matthew Farthing, and I am here to do a little bit of housekeeping, but first and foremost, just a really big warm welcome to all of you at the beautiful Mpokweni Beach Resort. Before we get things going, I just wanted to do a little bit of housekeeping and bring you all up to speed. As you would have seen, obviously we've got some gorgeous beaches around here that are perfectly safe to run, walk, and fish on. But if you are going to swim, please keep in mind that the sea here can get a little rough, and there are a couple of rip currents here and there. So please swim in groups. You would have seen canoes on the airstrip. Please feel free to use those, and we do recommend taking a life jacket. And if you do go above the bridge, please don't get out of the canoe. There is quite a lot of wildlife on the left-hand side, so unless you want to engage radically with a Cape buffalo, I would suggest staying in the boat. For those of you who would have seen that there are some mountain bike trails and some walking trails around here, please do use them to run and walk, and they are best enjoyed in groups. Regarding bathrooms here in the venue, so hopefully you would have all seen that if you go out the back here to the right, there are a set of bathrooms there. There are also a set of bathrooms through the restaurant, past the service counters on the right, and out the back down here to the left where the other two venues are at the bottom. So, but if you can't find one, please find someone with the yellow tag and shout and we'll direct you. For those that are presenting, ideally most of the presentation files would have already been uploaded. Otherwise, please visit the technician in each room to upload your talk every day if needed. From about 8 o'clock every morning, everything that was uploaded should be on each computer, but if you've got any queries or questions, or if you want to double check the version, please visit the technician in the morning and they'll be able to help you with that. Please keep in mind that it is the plan to record each of the presentations here. We did ask the question as to whether or not everybody consented, so for those of you that didn't, we will not be recording those, but we are hoping to distribute those online after the conference for those who couldn't make it. So thank you for all of that. Also on the note of presentations, chairs, please do your best to keep to time. We've got a relatively tight schedule in the mornings with some free time in the afternoons, but it does rely on us sticking to the allotted time slot for each talk. So please do that. The venues, this is our big plenary venue, and those of you who were at the workshops yesterday would already have found the oyster catcher rooms down at the bottom. Oyster catcher has been split into A and B. So if you walk down the stairs here, you'll find A, and if you go out the back where we had tea yesterday, you'll find the entrance to B. So again, if you can't find a venue, find a yellow tag wearing member of the team and we'll direct you, but everything is very close together and you shouldn't have any trouble switching between. Tomorrow evening is the poster evening, so for those of you that are presenting posters, please drop off your posters at our registration desk between now and tomorrow afternoon, and we will put those up for you. This evening is a quiz night before dinner, and the seating is assigned, so you can't bring your team from home. You're going to have to mix and mingle, so we're going to direct you where to sit this evening, and you'll have a team of people from who knows where, and hopefully that knowledge combined helps you. Lastly, the WhatsApp group. Sorry, you would have seen me nagging you on there about all sorts of things, but please join it if you haven't already. That's kind of our means to keep you up to date. So thanks very much for those who already have, and if you haven't, please check that out. There's a bunch of subgroups on there for different things. So I think that's all for me from a housekeeping point of view. So welcome again. Thank you all for coming, and I'll hand over to our conference coordinator, Warren. Thanks very much.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. This has been 2.5 years of planning, and it's incredible to see you all in the audience here today. So without further ado, I'd firstly like to welcome Dr. Angus Patterson, the acting CEO of the National Research Foundation, Dr. Kwesi Mzilikazi, the Deputy Vice Chancellor of Rhodes University for Research, Innovation and Strategic Partnerships. And it's quite a mouthful. And everyone here. So in here we have scientists, we have recreational fishing representatives, we have industry representatives, we have postgraduate students, we have early career researchers, and it's just incredible to see you all here this morning. And we're incredibly grateful to you for traveling, many of you great distances and often without baggage, to get here. I thought I would give you a little bit of brief history about the context of the World Recreational Fisheries Conference, and this is primarily just to try and set the scene for how amazing it is to have the conference where we are at the moment. So if you have a look here, we started off, and this is a 30-year history of this conference series, in Dublin, Ireland, then moved to Canada, Vancouver, Darwin, Australia, Trondheim, Norway, Fort Lauderdale in the US, Berlin, Germany, Campinas, Brazil, Victoria, Canada, Rotterdam, Netherlands, and finally Melbourne, Australia. And you'd notice that they are European, North American, South American, and Oceania, the continents. And for the first time, the 11th one is being held in Africa. And I think we can just have a round of applause for that. And right at the bottom there where that little blue star is where you're sitting currently. Obviously, Empukweni Beach Resort, so welcome everyone here. Sitting here are roughly 180 delegates from 27 countries around the world, which is incredible. We've got 30% of our delegates are from low and middle income countries, which again is incredible and really speaks to the fact that recreational fisheries knowledge is going to develop around the world, which is amazing. And then importantly, 31% of the delegates are postgraduate students. So we're going to have an awesome opportunity to interact with young people and, you know, inspire them hopefully to take on the research that and practices that we love so much. I thought I'd have a quick word about recreational fisheries in Africa and other low middle income countries. And we've been desperate to host it here because we feel that they're a little more complex than maybe in the developed world. They certainly don't necessarily have the amount of recognition that they should have. They're not generally well represented in any governance structures. And as a consequence, they have real potential for undermining livelihood fisheries, which many people in low and middle income countries are dependent on. But at the same time, they offer enormous opportunities for social development. And this is really the key, is balancing the livelihoods requirements of the poor with opportunities and promoting recreational fisheries for social development. And if we get that right, I believe that we're stepping into the right direction. So the objectives for us, certainly when in the lower middle income country context and an African context, is definitely to increase the recognition of recreational fisheries through awareness. You will see people recording the entire conference. We intend to put together a video of the conference, which will be uploaded and disseminated broadly. We will also be recording, as Matt said, all the talks, and those will also be uploaded. And the idea is really to get that out as broadly as possible. The next thing that we really hope to do, and this is really up to everyone in this room, is to really build some meaningful connections. And I mean, not that it's a divide, but let's try and incorporate the low middle income country thinking into the way that the needs of low middle income countries into our thinking and the way that we need to do things. do that best by speaking to one another, building networks, and hopefully getting many low middle income country scientists to actually join these international networks that are around all over. We really want to improve knowledge on how to develop evidence-based science for better governance, and there's some brilliant examples from around the world here that we're looking forward to seeing, for example, from Australia, from the US, Canada. So we're really looking forward to those talks. And then we want to be able to understand how to identify actual and potential conflicts between recreational fisheries and other potential sectors and figure out what are the best ways to mitigate these conflicts. And then finally, learn to recognize and really vigorously pursue opportunities for social development, because I think that really holds the key to the way recreational fisheries will go and shape the future in the developing world. Okay, just to give you a little bit of South African context, because many of you are from, don't have much of a clue about what's going on here. We're a real biodiversity hotspot. From a perspective of coastal fisheries, we have over 2,000 marine species, and 80% of the world's fish families are actually represented on our shores here. So incredible diversity in coastal fishes. We have over 139 freshwater species. Unfortunately, 36% of those are classified as threatened with extinction as a result of multiple stresses. But incredible diversity in this country. In terms of our ocean environment, we have a highly dynamic coastal environment. We've got a cool temperate west coast. We have got a tropical and subtropical ocean along the east coast. And then we have a mix of the two on the south coast. And the south coast is really, where we are now, is characterized by very warm sea events punctuated and interspersed with big upwelling and real cold water events. So our fish here are super tough in terms of their thermal tolerances. Our inland waters, on the other hand, are rather restricted natural waters. We've got very few. We're an arid country, so we've got really small rivers in comparison to what one would describe as a big river in global contexts. But we've got many impoundments because we need to preserve our freshwater resources. Probably around 3,500 registered impoundments, some of which are very large, but many private reservoirs, etc., where there's a great deal of recreational fishing happening. Another thing that I think we are super proud of is our extensive marine protected area network. We have an incredible marine protected area network. It's roughly 5% of our coastline, but perhaps the best thing about it is that much of it comprises large and old sanctuary areas where no fishing is allowed at all. And this provides us with unprecedented research opportunities on things like understanding the impacts of fishing. So incredible, and obviously a massive conservation benefit. We have incredibly complex coastal and inland fisheries. And the complexity is just in the diversity of the country's economy. We've got a real dual economy where we've got sort of first world type of economy with industry, strong agriculture, mining sectors, and then we have a third world economy which is characterized by poverty, unemployment. And this big divide means that our fisheries are very diverse in that we have, for example, recreational and subsistence fishers fishing next to each other with completely different motivations. We have commercial sector and recreational sector competing, and small-scale fishers competing with recreational and commercial fishers. So there's a great deal of complexity there, and trying to work out environmental justice is really key for us in terms of who gets what and how in the context of sustainability. Okay, but in terms of recreational fisheries, interestingly, and you probably wouldn't think it, they are the largest by participation of all our fishery sectors, both in inland and marine waters. And so they have a real impact on what's happening out on the water and a real impact on sustainability in general. There are two main things that are happening in South Africa at the moment that I think this conference can particularly contribute to. The first is we are in the process of beginning the implementation of our inland fisheries policy. We have a recently developed policy, but understanding how to implement it is complex, and we haven't necessarily figured it all out yet. But the knowledge that we're going to be developing in this room will hopefully make a real contribution about ways of thinking, certainly along the recreational fisheries side of these things. And secondly, we've got a revision of our Marine Living Resources Act, which is a policy that governs, which is an act that governs all of our marine fisheries, essentially. And in the revision, there's a really large part of it is participation in from various sectors, from public all the way through to institutes. And I'm hoping that the knowledge that we're developing here will really help us improve that process and make it more robust, and we can have better outcomes in the way that this Marine Living Resources Act works. So this is super time, yes, and I really believe that it's going to help us plot our way forward. Okay, now let's talk a bit closer. Let's talk about the Eastern Cape. And I don't think I need to describe to you what a stunning part of the world this is. I was speaking to many delegates, and they were pointing out that it was amazing to walk along a beach and virtually not see anyone for kilometers. And this is the one of the places in the world that you can do it. It's incredible. But at the antithesis of this beauty and this wonderful opportunity is a huge unemployment rate in the Eastern Cape. We've got 42% unemployment, and associated with that is a lot of poverty. And so in this conference, you'll notice that everything that you've got, all the lanyards, the bags, everything are locally sourced. Alex is going to talk to you a little bit about the Paiskama Trust over here, who prepared this beautiful tapestry for us. And the bags are all locally sourced. The prints on your shirts are the art from that is from a local artist from Port Elizabeth. So we've really tried to uplift as much as we can. There may be some opportunities. It's still a little bit uncertain, but there may be opportunities to have a sustainability village, which will be a large number of vendors, local vendors with their wares that will come to the conference, and you'll have opportunities to purchase some things from them. So if that happens, I encourage you to please support them. It's certainly going to be better than the stuff you'll buy at the airport. Okay, so we've really tried to take this conference and uplift as much as we can during the organization. Right, and I'd just like to thank our sponsors, okay? And first and foremost is the National Research Foundation and the South African National Conference Bureau, who provided funding for us to host this conference. In addition to that, American Fisheries Society provided funding for some of the attendees, which is incredible. And then we had some other sponsors that provided various goods and services through the way. But thank you very much. Without you guys, this certainly wouldn't have been possible, so thank you. Other thanks go to the International Scientific Board, who held our hands, whipped us into shape, if necessary, particularly Robert, and got us on the right track. And I think that when you look at the program, the scientific program, I think we're well satisfied with what it looks like. We're really excited for the week, but it's in a large thanks to the International Scientific Committee, who gave us feedback all the way through this process. And obviously the local scientific committee, everyone with these name tags have made an enormous contribution to what we've done here. If you need anything, find the yellow name tag and pursue them, hunt them down, and get them to do whatever you need. And then lastly, the eMpikweni Beach Resort, and Nicolette in particular, who's been absolutely phenomenal with the arrangements for this conference. And then to our keynote speakers. We are incredibly grateful that you have agreed to and consented to come and speak here. We're super excited about what you've got to say. We've got a big diversity in continents and where they're from, so we should get a real global perspective of what's going on in the world of recreational fisheries, and we're really looking forward to that. So thank you very much for taking the time out of busy schedules to come and offer your keynotes to us. Thank you, guys. Right, and now we have two people that I'd like to welcome. Firstly, I'd like to welcome Dr. Angus Patterson, who's the acting CEO of the National Research Foundation. I was amazed that Angus decided to come and join us because he has an incredibly busy schedule, but we did have a small in. He graduated from our department with a degree, a PhD in estuarine ecology. So he's a fish person, which is amazing, at the head of our National Research Foundation. And Angus has been for well over a decade was the director of the South African Institute for Aquatic Biodiversity, and instrumental in driving the aquatic research in South Africa forward through the development of national platforms that support research and a great deal more things. He's done an incredible amount for ichthyology and fisheries in South Africa. So I welcome him, and I'm really interested to hear what he's got to say. Thanks, Angus.
Thank you very much, Warren. Indeed, a big welcome to everybody, 27 countries, lots of delegates. I must acknowledge the Deputy Vice-Chancellor of Rhodes University, as well as all the other officials from government, the keynote speakers. We saw the picture up there, members of the scientific board, the professoriate and academia from around the world. And most importantly, which is what we really should be starting these conferences with, are the industry, angling communities, angling bodies, and community representatives. Because after all, that's why we do science. We do science for communities. The NRF warmly welcomes all of you. Certainly when I was invited, I was like, oh yeah, I'm coming. One can, don't tell the physicists, but astronomy and subatomic physics is not quite as inspiring as anything to do with fish. And if I had to open another cyclotron, tandotron, or telescope versus coming to speak to a bunch of ichthyologists and fishery scientists, I'm afraid you win hands down. Apart from the fact that I'll actually understand some of the talks today. So the one key thing about that is the world is changing very quickly. We've seen the geopolitical shifts. We've seen changes in funding agencies. I'm not going to be talking now about recreational fisheries per se, because we're going to have experts who are going to speak to you for the next week. I'm going to give you a little bit more of an overview of where global research funding is going and how recreational research can do. And we've got Professor Hecht looking at me, who was my mentor, so now I'm feeling very nervous. Hi, Tom. The world has changed radically in the last 18 months to 2 years. Funding for research has changed. One can look at watching BBC. You can see that UCRI is looking at a different trajectory. We can certainly look in the States to see a very different trajectory in where science is funding. That's on top of the fact, okay, that the fact that geopolitical climate is requiring more money to go elsewhere. So science funding is going to become tighter than it ever has been before. Certainly, what that does drive is something that we've also seen in the last decade, is moving science towards society. And I think that's the strength that you guys have. When I looked at the different talks and everything, I thought this is exactly the type of research that the National Research Foundation wants to try to support. Why? Because our 2030 mandate is research for a better society. And this is what we're talking about. We're talking about how do you blend everything together so that we get the maximum return for everybody. How do you work out what the compromises are? Okay, and how do you allocate the research funding, which is super important. The NRF has a strategy for 2030, which is called TIES, which is Transformation, Impact, Excellence, and Sustainability. And when you unpack that in terms of what you guys are trying to achieve over the next few days, it becomes very apparent just how well fitted this type of work is. Firstly, on transformation, Warren started at the top. South Africa comes from a very, very difficult background. We have the largest Gini coefficient in the world. So we have very wealthy, but we have extreme levels of poverty. We have a history of apartheid. And that history of apartheid has inculcated every aspect of lives in South Africa, whether it be the demographics, whether it who has what, where we located, where we found, who had access to recreational fisheries, who was allowed to fish where. So transformation is a key component, and that's certainly an active component of what the recreational community needs to unpack. And we know that environmental justice, historical justice is part of it. As Warren said, we've got an amazing marine protected area, some well over 40, 50 years old. The difficulty was how they were formed during an apartheid era. How do we deal with that now? Okay, there are a whole range of different things. The National Research Foundation is unapologetic around diversity, inclusion, and inclusivity. We look to produce the next generation of African scientists that represent what Africa looks like across the board. It's a very, very important component for us. We look to Agenda 2063, to looking at the rest of Africa. The fact that we've had to wait so long for a conference like this, and I'm very happy to have it, speaks to the role that Africa needs to play in future leading this type of aspects. So transformation is certainly a component that is deeply embedded, and one of the ones that Warren and all the researchers in South Africa, with your help, it's a living lab, because we are changing our policies. We are looking at how we redress the past. So the social component comes in it. In terms of impact, the second after TIES, the NRF has very much pushed an impact framework. In other words, changing research to outcomes and then finally impact. And that's exactly what you guys are about. How do you manage fisheries for the best everything? It's not just the BRUV surveys. It's not just the ROV surveys or the angling or the telemetry. It's what you do with it all in the end to make sure that we manage the fisheries effectively and so that everyone can get it. Transdisciplinarity, interdisciplinarity, absolutely the way to go. The only way we answer things properly. We come from an era now, or we're going into an era now where that's a key component. And when one looks at many of the talks here, that's exactly what you guys are about. Getting on to excellence, I don't think there's any shortage of excellence in fisheries in South Africa. I think we've had 100 years of good research. Certainly we're growing in the recreational area as well now. There's also going to be a recognition by the National Research Foundation that transdisciplinarity and interdisciplinary research takes longer. It's hard to co-create stuff. It's hard to interact with communities. It doesn't just fit into a 2-3 year grant cycle. How do we cope with that? How do you fund that? And how do you measure that? These are all the type of impact aspects that we need to look at to make sure that we can enable the recreational research community and fisheries as a whole in South Africa. It's no more as well do we go out with a bucket and spade. Vessels, telemetry networks, BRUVs, ROVs, tags, all of these type of things cost money. The only way we're going to be able to maintain that is if we convince the politicians, and they're ultimately the ones that fund. We've convinced in the South African context what's called the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee that this is worth funding. This is why we're funding it. It makes it different to people's lives on the ground. It's not something abstract, it's really real. On the sustainability aspect, the last part of TIES, obviously there's environmental sustainability, there's socio-economic sustainability, there's political buy-in, and also, of course, there's a social license to operate. And what recreational fisheries research and conferences like this do is pull them all together. And that's the key in terms of the message that one needs to give to government to get the funding that you guys require. I'm not going to speak anything more because I'm sure you guys have got a week full of really interesting talks rather than hearing a political one. But we really do welcome you to South Africa. Enjoy yourselves. It's certainly Africa's time to shine, and we will be doing so in the next decade or so. So we look forward to working with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Angus. Just drop this again for me and Kwesi. And so the next person I'd like to come up and speak is Kwesi Mzilikazi, as I mentioned, Deputy Vice Chancellor, Research, Innovation and Strategic Partnerships at Rhodes University. Kwesi is relatively new in this position at Rhodes. I think it's 2 years now, but already we feel an enormous difference at the university. Just from the perspective of our department, we have found enormous support from her office, and her leadership and her guidance has been incredible over this very short amount of time. Dr. Kwesi Mzilikazi is in fact an ecologist, an ecophysiologist, so we speak a lot of the same language, which is really, really amazing as well. Okay, so without further ado, Kwesi, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Warren. On behalf of Rhodes University, it gives me great pleasure to welcome you to the 11th World Recreational Fisheries Conference, hosted here at Mbekweni, a short distance from the creative city of Makhanda, the home of Rhodes University, the City of Saints, home of SciFest Africa, and home of the National Arts Festival. We are delighted to host you in this beautiful part of the Eastern Cape province, which is a historic and vibrant space where science, culture, and community intersect. Rhodes University is honored to have been selected to host this important conference because of its scientific, social, and economic significance, as the two speakers before me have already alluded. Hosting this important congress for us is a strategic and deliberate choice. It allows us to position our province as a destination for academic conferences and intellectual exchange, while of course leveraging our university's 122 years of academic excellence and partnerships to generate local economic impact for broader societal benefit. I wish to acknowledge all our conference delegates, as well as everyone who will be presenting either orally or by poster, for making this conference a success. I would like to extend a special word of appreciation to all the sponsors, the volunteers, and of course, our local organizing committee. I also wish to acknowledge Dr. Angus Peterson, the acting CEO of the National Research Foundation, whom I'm also privileged to call a friend. I would also like to acknowledge our keynote speakers. I'm not going to attempt to say some of the names because I'm going to not do it correctly. So acknowledgement to all our keynote speakers. As well as the members of the International Scientific Board, as well as the representatives from national and provincial government, including SANParks, Eastern Cape Parks and Tourism, and Cape Nature. This conference, as Angus has alluded, takes place at a time where the world is defined not by a single risk, but the convergence of multiple risks, including climate breakdown, biodiversity loss, cyber insecurity, social polarization, migration pressures, and rapid technological disruption. The World Economic Forum and others describe this condition as a polycrisis, a set of interconnected challenges that compound one another and amplify global instability. Here at home, our country faces high levels of unemployment, deep structural inequality, poverty, and youth marginalization. These realities shape our policy debates, our research agenda, and our development priorities. Yet, these challenges are not uniquely South African. Across the African continent, and indeed in many parts of the world, societies are grappling with how to generate inclusive growth, sustainable livelihoods, and meaningful participation in an era of economic uncertainty and ecological strain. In this context, higher education institutions carry a dual mandate, which is critical responsibility. First, that responsibility pertains to generation of knowledge and innovation that's required to anticipate and mitigate the challenges and the risks. And second, to educate and prepare the next generation of scholars, practitioners, policymakers who should all be capable of acting in complex and uncertain environments. It is precisely in this context that gatherings such as this one matter. Recreational fisheries are sometimes framed narrowly as a leisurely activity. Yet globally, they have become a major component of fisheries systems, generating significant economic value, supporting jobs across value chains, sustaining coastal and inland communities, and contributing to physical and mental well-being. They are also deeply embedded in cultures, in identity, and in heritage. Tourism spending linked to recreational angling represents one of the most visible contributions. About 10 years ago, I am told, in South Africa alone, domestic recreational anglers injected an estimated 36.2 billion rand into the national economy. And that figure represents not only rods and reels, it represents accommodation, transport, guiding services, equipment, hospitality, manufacturing, small enterprises, and local livelihoods. There is also growing recognition that recreational fisheries increasingly interact with small-scale and commercial fisheries, particularly in the global south, where fisheries are deeply linked to livelihoods and food security and equity and development. In other words, recreational fisheries sit at the intersection of ecology, economy, and society. And this brings about unique challenges linked to governance, access, rights allocation, tourism dynamics, and conservation trade-offs. Challenges that demand careful evidence, inclusive dialogue, and collaborative solutions. And so this conference has attracted a remarkably diverse mix of participants: postgraduate students, postdoctoral fellows, leading academics, senior scholars, researchers from national facilities, industry partners, public sector leaders, anglers, leaders from national and provincial departments and entities, conservation entities, and representatives from civil society at large. It has brought together biologists, social scientists, economists, policymakers, managers, conservationists, NGOs, angler representatives, and industry leaders. And so what makes this gathering so important is precisely this convergence of publics, those who generate the knowledge, those who apply it, and those who regulate it, but especially those who depend on it and those who advocate for it. This diversity reflects the complexity of the sector itself and signals a shared commitment to stewarding fisheries and their resources responsibly and sustainably. At Rhodes University, we pride ourselves on being a place where science, policy, and society meet. We are deeply community-centered, and committed to transdisciplinary approaches that provide evidence for decision making and build capacity to meet future challenges, including support for the blue economy. We do not simply acknowledge the value of multi, inter, and transdisciplinary approaches to research and innovation. We actively support them. Our logic is simple. The stubborn challenges of our time do not respect disciplinary, geographical, social, economic, or political boundaries. Addressing them requires that we work together, pooling our expertise, resources, and collective commitment. In a world of interconnected challenges, our responsibility as scientists is not only to advance knowledge, but to ensure that knowledge is accessible, applicable, and impactful in the lives of communities, industries, and societies. And as I inch closer to the end of my welcome address, I am especially excited for our postgrad students and early career academics, because an international conference such as this one may represent a pivotal moment in their postgrad journey. It is often at gatherings like these that students begin to see themselves not only as learners, but as contributors to knowledge and innovation. Here, the young scholars encounter not only cutting-edge research, but the global scientific community itself, its debates, its standards, and its possibilities. For many, this may be a first experience of international networks, of interdisciplinary collaboration, and the confidence that their ideas belong on a world stage. Conferences like this do more than showcase excellence. They nurture the next generation of scientists by investing in them and their transition from students to scholars and ultimately leaders who will carry science from the laboratory into life. Of course, after the conference, I'd like to encourage you to take time to explore the rich cultural and natural offerings of our part of the world. After all, the tagline for this province is the Eastern Cape, yours to explore. I thank you.
Right. Thank you so much, Kwesi and Angus. Angus, for providing us some real context on where we are with funding, and also understanding more the global perspectives and national perspectives of where we need to go in terms of our way forward from a funding perspective. And Kwesi, again, summarizing really what this conference is all about, and that's knowledge sharing and development. So thank you very much. I have these gifts for you, sustainably sourced and from the Eastern Cape, for Angus, who is a mad keen spear fisherman, and I've heard prefers yellowtail the most. There's a picture of a yellowtail for you from Craig Bertram Smith, and for Kwesi, our national fish, galleon. So thank you.